I'm Brian Van from SportBikeTrackGear.com, and today we are going to install an Ohlins steering dampener on our 2012 Yamaha YZF-R1. This bike comes from the factory with an electronically controlled steering damper, okay? Every bike I've ever had, I've put an aftermarket damper on. I'm gonna do that in this case too. You know, I have heard some good things about this unit, but at the end of the day, when it comes to suspension, for me, it's all about Ohlins, right? Love their forks, love their shocks, and they make a great steering damper as well. So we're gonna go ahead and put that on the R1. I've already got the upper fairing removed. Easy to do with race bodywork. We've shown you kind of what it takes to take off the street bodywork too. So if you have a street bike, you can look for that video and see what it's gonna take to get your fairings off. You need to do that to really get good, clean access to this steering damper. Got a couple of things we need to deal with here. We've got a wiring harness, okay? The end of it terminates over in this area of the bike here, between the engine and the frame on the left side. So we're gonna have to get some more access to that. We're just gonna remove this ram air system here to deal with the electronics, okay? What they've done here is Ohlins has a plug-in device that essentially eliminates that, so you're not going to have any issues moving forward. These kits come complete. Solid instructions, very solid instructions, written very clean and clear. Got all the necessary mounting hardware. You can see that here is the damper mount itself. It actually slides over the damper. This holds it in place. And then we have the mounting hardware that is going to allow the heim joint here at the end of the damper to install right here to the factory bracket. Go ahead and pull those pieces out and give you an idea of what we're looking at here. Pretty straightforward. You know, I would say that the most effort's going to be in the bodywork removal and then accessing that wiring harness. This is also going to give us a good opportunity. I want to get this horn off of here, okay? So that'll give us an opportunity to get that off. We need to remove this lower shroud here to do that. So we're gonna, while we're in this area, we're gonna go ahead and take care of that as well. And to do the damper, you see the main mounting bolt is right here, and it's covered up by the bracket that retains the brake lines, which is held on in the fasteners here. First, I'm gonna chase that wiring harness. Let's go ahead and remove the trim and the ram air system here from the left side of the motorcycle. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, the instructions Ohlins provides are very solid. We've got torque specs in there if you choose to use those. Very clean and clear installation instructions, which if you haven't done a job like this, can really benefit you. Take a minute, look at the instructions before you begin the job. Let's go ahead and trace that wiring harness back here. Got it fed through a couple of different wire ties. I'm going to go ahead and loosen those. Some of them are reusable. You know, these real nice factory ones are really reusable. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to keep that in one piece, so don't cut those. We have some others, I believe, that are one use that we may need to cut as we're going through this. Drive a pair of side cutters to do that. Trace it back, and I can feel the end here is inside this protective boot. So we can slide this back a little bit and have a look at it, and then grab a pair of side cutters, go ahead and cut off this cable tie right here, which we will in turn place forward with this project. This really allows this to come back nicely. I should be able to give you a pretty decent look here at this connector. Kind of fish around inside until we find it. This is the stuff too, you really, as you're getting the bike put back together, take your time with this stuff. Make sure that you have got everything routed correctly and that you're not going to create issues down the road for yourself. Remember, the wires, if they're not protected, there can be contact points, right, where they can be rubbing against frame, suspension, engine components, you know, any of the above, and that will create a pretty solid issue moving forward, and that's a big deal on a race bike or even on a street bike. You don't want to leave yourself stranded to create a mechanical issue because you didn't take the time to really secure the wiring harness properly. That's most critical anytime you're doing something to the motorcycle that is altering it from stock, okay? In the stock position, right, all the stock components, they do a great job from the factory of really making sure that everything's tied down quite nicely, but as you begin to change the motorcycle, right, and really make it more your own, you need to be very careful to ensure that you have everything tied off very nicely. A little bit of disassembly here to get to the actual mounting bolt for the steering damper. The benefit in this case is going to be, we're going to be able to take that horn off of there and just shave a little more weight. This is a big bike, man. This bike's got some girth to it, a lot more than I'm used to with the 600s, that's for sure, and that's going to make this whole situation rather interesting this season. So anything I can shave off of this thing weight-wise, I'm going to do it. Okay, I've got the panel from underneath the lower triple removed, and here is the horn. This is also a bracket that was retaining the brake line kit. Remember, we're going to be changing this brake line kit. We're going to be installing the Spiegler, right, Ren Sport kit, which is still the 1-into-2. It keeps it nice and clean, but it's going to be stainless steel braided lines. And I'll have to look a little further, but I don't think we're going to have to put this back on. I am, however, going to put this panel back on because looking at it, to me, it looks like this may have a little bit to do with deflecting some airflow towards the radiator, and these bikes do have a history of running a little bit to the warm side, so we're going to keep that in place. Now we have perfect access to the fasteners for the steering damper, okay? I'm going to go ahead and get the lower retaining bolt, break that loose, get that off of there, and then we'll go after the one on the heim joint here on the end of the damper. Realistically, it may even be a little bit of a weight savings advantage. You know, not huge, but a little bit of a weight savings advantage with the Ohlins damper as compared to the stock unit, because I gotta be honest with you, it's a pretty big looking steering damper. I don't know that I've ever really seen one of that size before on a bike of this style. Okay, there's that fastener there. Fasteners out of the way. There's a bracket that's attached to that as well to help hold the wiring harness out of the way. Go ahead and go after this here. And now we need to have a look at the Ohlins directions and get the new mounting that attaches to the fork tube in place so we can get the damper up there. Got to cut a couple of these cable ties right here as they are holding. It looks like that is the front wheel speed sensor harness. You can see that's a pretty bulky unit in comparison to this one. Quite a difference. Let's go ahead and have a look at the instructions. Get this mounted in place. They have included in the hardware too is top notch, just as you would expect, right? Got a nylock style nut here, so that's going to keep that in place for us. We don't have to worry about it coming loose. Got the washer here. I'm going to go ahead and feed that up through. Put our washer in place. considering the fact that we are using, they provided that nylock style nut, there's no need to use any type of Loctite there. All right, I've got the provided mounting hardware tightened up on the left side fork tube now. The kit has you reusing the same connecting bolt that you used with the stock steering damper. And like I said, even this wiring loom bracket here, I'm gonna reuse that because it keeps things nice and tidy. For the time being, we're gonna take the damper mount that is included with the kit, and I'm going to put it on there, but I'm not going to tighten it down. And notice I have the fasteners facing down because I'm gonna need to be able to get to those easily as we dial in this dampener for its sweep back and forth. Loctite. Steering damper is a crucial part of any race bike. Street bike too. Head shake's a big problem. You know, you get the bike unsettled like that, it can result in an accident. And I definitely want to try and avoid that, especially on a bike that I'm not keeping forever. I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on that just to keep it tight. Another reason that I'm choosing to do that is this damper is located in a position where, you know, it's not on top of the triple clamp. So I'm not going to be looking at this every time I go out. You know, a different style damper that is mounted up there, every time you go out and ride, you're going to see it. You know, it's going to be right there. You're going to be able to see it, touch it. So if you do have an issue with it, I think it's going to be a lot easier to discover it before it turns into a huge issue. With this one, let's take a minute, use a little bit of Loctite, and just try to hedge our bet and avoid having an issue. Because if the damper even comes just loose, right, that allows it to wiggle around and it is unable to dampen as it should, so it loses its effectiveness big time. Once again, torque. If you are not comfortable with your hand tools, you know what? Refer to your service manual. Ohlins has provided torque settings for the bolts here, but not for the one that mounts it to the frame of the motorcycle. They want you to use the stock torque setting, which is fair. Next up, we need to, with the provided fastener from Ohlins, we need to mount the end of the damper to the provided hardware here. It's pushing on the brake line a little bit. That's going to be out of the way. I'm going to use, in this situation, I'm also going to use a little bit of Loctite here. Very important, this fastener does not come loose. You know, realistically, there's not a ton of force working on these fasteners, but still very important they do not wiggle loose. Looks like that's going to be about 5 millimeter. Get a T-handle for that one. This one now, we can go ahead and torque this down, okay? There is no reason that we can't torque this one down because this has nothing to do with adjusting the sweep of the damper. So we're going to go ahead and snug that up. Come back to the center mount where the damper bracket bolts to the frame of the motorcycle. I'm going to finish that one off. And that one's good and tight as well. Okay, mounting fasteners are both tight, right here at the frame and here at the fork tube adapter, which is a factory part. We still have the actual damper mount itself. It's loose, and the damper body is able to float back and forth. What I'm going to do to adjust that is I'm going to turn all the way to the right stop, okay? I'm going to take the damper, I'm going to push it over, and I'm going to bottom it all the way out. And then what I want to do is I want to back off. You can see I'm holding the wheel too, so it's up against, firmly up against that steering stop. I'm going to push the damper off that bottomed out position a little bit, and I'll explain why. What's going to happen is debris, over time, debris can get caught in there, okay? And if you have it to where it completely bottoms out, in my opinion, what could happen is you could begin to try and force debris when it comes all the way to the stop in through the seal, then your damper will leak and it won't be functional anymore. So for that reason, I have backed it off just a little bit. These fasteners, Ohlins does provide a torque specification for. It's listed clearly on the instructions. I would encourage you to follow that. Now, let's go ahead and check the sweep of our damper. We're good in that direction. And we're good in that direction. You can see it uses the majority of the stroke. Continue to check that. Something else that is important too, it's critical that the damper is able to float up and down unrestricted, okay? If there's any binding here, that can have a negative impact on how the damper works, and that would indicate that you maybe have some incorrect spacing with washers or something. As long as you follow the instructions, I don't believe you'll run into that, but also check that. And of course, now you have your resistance settings here with the damper. Let's go ahead and turn that to full tight. You can clearly see that works. The feel as I loosen it, it's getting a lot easier, and then from there I'm just going to go ahead and turn it full off, like so. One last tip I want to give you. What I like to do with all of my bikes is I like to take and put a standard lead wheel weight that has the sticky tape on the other side, stick on lead wheel weight, one piece. And if you'll come over here, Josh, I'm going to put it on the steering stop on the frame right inside here. Might be a little tough to see, the lighting's not great right now, a little late in the day. I've cleaned that with brake cleaner, so that will stick nicely. I'm going to do that on both sides. And the method behind that madness is really simple. You can have a tiny little crash, right? Fall over, the handlebar grabs, jams, the steering stops together, and what I've seen happen in select types of crashes is I've seen the steering stop just crack literally right off the lower triple tree. Then you got to put a triple set on it. It's a real pain in the ass. Lead is a really soft material, okay, and then you also have that little bit of foam tape behind it, and that helps to manage the energy in a crack, and you would be surprised how well this works. What we'll do is, if in fact I do have a tip over, and this is on all my bikes, I'll look at it after, and you'll see if the handlebar hit the ground, you'll see that lead is just smashed and flattened. It really manages that load, and it helps to keep the bike from getting damaged further and getting tweaked. From here, obviously, we need to reassemble the bike. One of the key things that we need to do right now is plug in the Ohlins supplied resistor. We showed you where the harness was at, right? It's right over in here. Not too hard. I mean, this isn't really, I don't think it's too critical that we show you this. You just need to get out the male portion of this connector, like so. Plug them in. The most important step here, okay, is going to be make sure that when you have this all said and done and you have everything routed, right, that you're not going to put these wires in harm's way. Take a minute, use some cable ties, make sure that you've secured this so that the wires, especially on a street bike, are not going to be rubbing on the frame or anywhere on the motorcycle where they could chafe through. I think we've done a pretty decent job. We've got some reassembly to do here, and we spelled that out in the beginning, and that's just a reverse process. I think we gave you a couple of really good tips here, especially with the steering stops. That's a great tip. Putting that lead wheel weight on there can make all the difference in a small crash. I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com. This is our Ohlins steering damper install on our 2012 Yamaha R1 STG project bike.